This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
So I promised you I was going to bring David Bossie on. He is, you all know David Bossie. He is a political genius. I don't think Donald Trump would be president today if it weren't for David Bossie. That's how important his views are on politics and policy. David Bossie, thanks so much for joining.
Oh, always my pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me back.
So much I need to talk to you about. So can we go back to the very beginning can you tell us about the first time, because you met Donald Trump. I mean, you were absolutely instrumental in helping Trump get elected the first time and the second time. When was the first time you said, hey, this guy could be president?
You're going to think I'm crazy, but I first met Donald Trump in 2010.
Okay.
And Steve, I brought Steve Bannon and a few others who ended up working on the 2016 campaign.
Right.
I brought Steve, I think in 2012, to meet with Donald Trump to discuss running for president. That's how.
Hold on, time out. Hold on. That's a really important point because, you know, we did not pick a good candidate in 2012. We had Mitt Romney, who was a loser. And,
right.
and I wonder, you know, I will wonder this day whether if Donald Trump and run, you know, it's just kind of, rewinding history here. But was he seriously considering running in 2012?
Not really, but he wanted to start to really think about it. It was when he recognized, and as you see, Steve, because you now know the boss incredibly well, but you know he has his finger on the pulse of this nation.
He sure does.
Like no other person, I believe, in American history, really. I mean, he's not a politician. He's a guy who really comes from the street, and he has the understanding of what matters to people, what impacts people. That's the New Yorker.
It's almost like he has a sixth sense, you know.
He does. And I'll be honest with you, I've heard him say some things early on, you know, over the last 15 years, meaning early on in the process of whatever the topic is, and I go, no way, right? And then within 5 minutes or 5 months, he's proven correct, and it's uncanny to me. So I met him 2010 when my son, who had a lot of health problems, was going through some brain surgeries, and he and I was introduced to a mutual friend who then introduced me to Donald Trump because I was trying to raise money for Children's Hospital, to help other families who didn't have the same opportunities that my family did. So Donald Trump, without knowing me, instantaneously loved my kids and started to help with the Children's Hospital effort. And wasn't the publicity, he didn't promote it. He just did it. And that's one of the things that's always been he's the unsung hero guy when you are doing these types of charity events over the many years of his
he's given
life.
So much to charity.
It's really been remarkable, and that's how I got to know him. And so then I introduced him to Steve Bannon, and I
that was a fateful meeting because those two really, you know, the three of you were really the architects of this whole Trump phenomenon.
Yeah, and then I introduced him, and I hired Corey Lewandowski to be, you know, to run the campaign, and you know, and
by the way, Corey, I think Corey was a good friend of mine, and he really deserves a lot of respect and admiration as well for you know, running the first part of that campaign and taking Trump from 0 all the way up to 40% in the polls. It was amazing.
Well, I don't say this lightly. There's a few people. Obviously, Donald Trump is 99%, if not more, of the equation. But there are people like Steve Bannon, like Corey Lewandowski.
Yes. And you. Like
Kellyanne. Well, I appreciate that. And I think there was the crew, our crew, including Dan Scavino, those people, Hope Hicks, without our small, and when I mean in a presidential campaign where you have hundreds and hundreds of people, we had 5 or 10 at the most that was really running the thing. And so our little crew did an incredible job. And so I'm incredibly proud of having been, one of the early ones. And so I've gotten to know him. I've known the president now 15, 16 years. And I just so appreciate the warrior's heart that he has. And I think guys like me, guys like you have known what he's capable of, but the American people over the last 45 days, they really have seen.
So great point. So I got a question for you. When I first met Donald Trump, I met him in early 2016 when that campaign was just getting going. And I always tell my audience, when I went in with Larry Kudlow to see him in Trump Tower, I did not have a positive, he had asked us to come and meet with him, and I was curious about him, but I have to tell you, I did not have a positive attitude towards Trump. And we spent an hour and a half together, the three of us. And when got honest truth, Dave, we walked out of that room and our jaws dropped and we said, he's going to be the next president. He is incredibly charismatic. He gets right to the point. He was charming. Now my question for you, though, is when you kind of first met Donald Trump, which was before, right when he was starting to think about politics, my reservation about Trump is I didn't think he was a conservative, and I'm a conservative. You're a conservative.
Yeah.
So my question is, back then, has he evolved, or when you first met him, was he a conservative?
It's such a great and important question, and really, I personally believe there are going to be history books written on that very topic.
Right.
Because, and I will tell you, I was nervous. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. I was nervous in 2012, 14, 16, all the way leading up to it, because what does he say, Steve? He's a deal maker. I'm a deal maker. I'm not like your average politician. If it's a good idea, I'm going to do it. And, well, you look at some of these issues dating back to 2015, 2016. They're not the same issues as they are today. And the world is a different place 8 years later. And so whether it's on the issues of the economy, foreign policy, national security, education, the life issue, there were so many people who had no idea where he was from. But I can tell you, he is a student of the business, and he really takes the time to listen. People, they mock him over the years. He is incredibly smart. He is incredible.
You know what? You're so right. And in fact, people always ask me, because I actually knew Reagan a little bit. I worked for Reagan in his last year in office. And people always ask me, how are Reagan and Trump different and the same? And I always say one of the things about Trump and Reagan that I think is really startlingly similar, and I want your reaction to this, Dave, is they were both always underestimated by their political opponents. Remember, they said, Reagan, and that's a big joke. He can't run for president. He's just an actor.
Right. Yeah, underestimate him at your own peril. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Donald Trump has beaten everything. I mean, look, your audience today, now we know, look, he was 2 assassination attempts, fake impeachments, multiples, fake indictments, fake trials, all political, all weaponized. Yes. And he beats everything at every turn. This guy is tougher, and he's made us something, quite honestly, that I've witnessed, but I don't understand the chemical makeup of somebody who can continuously walk into the fire and come out of it stronger. It's just incredible to watch, and it's an honor to be around him. But to go back to your point, your question of was he a conservative? He was a conservative because he's a common sense. That's really what it was.
Exactly.
Common sense conservative. And but he said, I don't want to get wrapped up into all of these, issues that inflame people. Let's talk about what's best for America. And look, when he won the first time, I was worried that, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer back then in 2016 would walk into his office in Trump Tower, put their arms around him and say, we're going to work with you.
Right.
Because that would have been a different trajectory for Donald Trump. And instead, what did they do? They alienated him from election night on. He was not a legitimate president because he beat Hillary Clinton, and the way we did it, he was never legitimate in their eyes, and they attacked him viciously from the first minute, and I thanked them for it. Because America's better off.
Well, he is blessed by the incompetence of his opponents, and I think that you're exactly right when you describe him as a common sense conservative. I've always said, going back to Reagan and Trump, because I think they're two of the most fascinating figures in American politics over the last 60 years, that Reagan, the one difference between Reagan and Trump, and I'd love your reaction to this, is Reagan was a kind of ideological conservative, right?
Yes.
He had grown up with Milton Friedman and, with National Review, and, he knew about Hayek and things like that. Trump is not in my opinion, is not an ideological conservative. He is, I use the same term, he's a common sense conservative. By the way, folks, I'm talking to Dave Bossie, who is one of the geniuses who really helped. I don't think Donald Trump would be president today with that David Bossie. So I wonder about your reaction. For example, I am for free trade. Trump is much more of a tariff guy. And every time I see him, he says, he's more than a great economist, but he doesn't agree with me on tariffs, and I always smile. I say, but, look, I love the fact that you can disagree with them, and still be part of his team.
Absolutely. That it's been a remarkable thing to watch over the years, how people have come and gone and stayed inside his, inside of his group. I've been blessed to be able to do it, and I know you feel the same way. But, Ronald Reagan was an ideological conservative because at that time in American and world history, that's how you were born and bred. It is the Cold War is what really lit a fire right under Ronald Reagan and defeating the Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union hasn't existed since 92 or 1989, right? I guess is when the
exactly.
So 1989. So it's been a long time, and Donald Trump now he looks at the world obviously through a different lens, and so he wants to project American strength, and he believes in peace through strength, which was Reagan's real common thread that he believed in, and that the American people got on board with. But it is they're totally different conservatives. As you said, he's a conservative. Donald Trump is a conservative, but he's much more a very pragmatist, a common sense guy, and that's one of the reasons that when he talks to the American people, he's authentic in it. He's not trying to create the air of some intellectual argument that Hayek gave in some book that he wrote, many, many, many years ago. He's talking to you in today's terms, and that's what really. I think that's what separates him from the rest.
So, again, I agree with you. I'm talking to Dave Bossie, who was really one of the architects of the Trump revolution. I think that Trump is really looking at history and at his legacy already. I think, knowing Donald Trump, not nearly as well as you do, but he wants to go down. He always has to be the best, right? And I think he wants to go down as one of the greatest presidents in history. And he has an opportunity to do that, frankly, given the triumphs of his first term and what he's doing now. And so, what do you think? I mean, I think he could, if he gets it right and rebuilds our economy, I think he could bring peace throughout the world. That would be a pretty amazing thing.
If he brings peace to the Ukraine, after being snubbed, to be candid with you, over the Abraham Accords by the Nobel Committee, and what happened really to the Nobel committee. I mean, they became a joke, right, in the sense of who they give it to. He's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize if he brings.
You know what? I do not believe that's true. I mean, I certainly believe he definitely deserves it. But do you really think the Nobel Peace Prize Committee would ever give Donald Trump the
I don't
award?
know, but I can tell you, we'll create another
right.
Nobelette Peace Prize, and we will create something that he will win because if you bring peace to the Ukraine and you ended up bringing peace to
the Middle East, in the Middle East,
and you now with if you open the door to Iran and get them under control with the nuclear, you are going to be historically one of the greatest presidents of all time, and that's irregardless of what happens with the economy. And the economy.
By the way, I was just thinking when you were talking. I don't think Ronald Reagan ever won a Nobel Prize.
No, he did not.
But you know, it's a joke. You know what president did win the Nobel Prize?
Yeah, Barack Obama.
Barack Obama.
Exactly. By the way, they gave it to him before he took office. Like he won it so early, he didn't even prove himself. It was remarkable. Exactly. That's why I say it's a joke. This committee's a joke. But look, Donald Trump is thinking in the terms as you described him. He is thinking in historic terms.
I
you look at what he's done in the first, we're about 50 days in. You look at what he has accomplished, what he's done, what he's taking on. This guy, when he says, he said during his speech, in the first 45, the other night to Congress, most presidents do in 4 years what I've done in the first 45 days. Now that's true. People want to say that's just talking. That's actually true. Okay.
Well, Dave Bossie, we've got to take a hard break here. I so much come on the show again. You have so many great stories, and we learn a lot from you in terms of the possibility that Donald Trump could go down as one of our greatest presidents.